Hello, welcome to the Fine Print. On the 28th of December, later this year, Myanmar's junta is set to stage what it calls a general election. In reality, it is neither general nor an election in any meaningful way. The generals who seized power in the 2021 coup are not handing back democracy. They are simply dressing military rule in civilian clothes. The junta has just lifted its 4-year state of emergency and set up a caretaker civilian government, and it has promised to face polls across more than 100 of Myanmar's 330 townships. But this is just theatre, not a transition. Opposition parties are banned, resistance leaders are jailed and exiled, and 25% of parliamentary seats remain reserved for military regardless of results. The outcome has already been written for Myanmar. The timing tells its own story though. The army has lost unprecedented amounts of territory since 2021 thanks to multiple democratic resistance fronts, with estimates suggesting it controls little more than a fifth of the country outside major cities. The military hopes an election will paper over these losses and buy legitimacy, especially abroad. If Myanmar's people are the biggest losers, the biggest enablers are clear. It's China and Russia. Both have shielded the junta at the UN, continued to sell weapons to them, and have provided political cover. Beijing, in particular, has pressured the generals to stage an election not out of democratic idealism, but to protect its own economic assets and corridors that links Yunnan to the Indian Ocean. Policy experts have mentioned that for China, stability means a weak but pliant regime in Naypyidaw, no matter how illegitimate. Russia, facing its own pariah status after Ukraine, sees Myanmar as an arms market and a symbol of defiance against your typical Western powers. Together, Beijing and Moscow are ensuring Myanmar's generals remain supplied, armed, and diplomatically insulated, while millions of civilians continue to pay the price. And here's where it matters to us, Singaporeans.
Despite ASEAN's core principles of consensus and non-interference, ASEAN can still play a constructive role in facilitating, hopefully, a return to normalcy and stability in Myanmar. This was why Singapore strongly supported ASEAN's efforts from the start, including the ASEAN Chair's statement. We believe in engagement and dialogue in good faith with all relevant stakeholders.
Number one, the violence must stop. Number two, you do need to release the political detainees.
On paper, Singapore has taken a strong line, condemning violence, insisting on ASEAN's 5-point consensus, which is now declared a failure by Human Rights Watch, and tightening export controls. Local banks have also been told to stop servicing junta-linked accounts, and authorities have investigated firms flagged by the UN for trading arms and dual-use goods with Myanmar's military. But the numbers simply tell a very different story. Singapore remains one of Myanmar's top foreign investors, with approximately more than 446 million US dollars tied up in energy, oil, gas, and manufacturing. Justice for Myanmar reported that even after the coup, companies based here continued land lease payments to military-linked entities. Critics argue that while we may not openly back the generals, Singapore's financial system and business ties have quietly helped keep the Myanmar junta regime afloat. For Southeast Asia, Myanmar's future is not a distant problem. A war-torn neighbor at our doorstep destabilizes the region, strains ASEAN unity, and opens space for Beijing and Moscow to redraw the rules of engagement in our backyard. For Singapore, the stakes are even sharper. Our reputation as a principled, rules-based financial hub is at risk if our firms are seen as conduits for blood money. Yes, blood money. The generals in Naypyidaw may think an election will buy them legitimacy, and Russia and China may be happy to play along. But for Singapore, the real question is whether we continue walking the line between principle and profit, or whether we finally take a harder stance that matches our words with deeds. This article reflects the author's personal commentary on current affairs. It draws on publicly available sources which are linked for transparency and further reading. Readers of the fine print are encouraged to review these materials and form their own conclusions. Now, till we meet again, goodbye.